I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. So I have already finished 8 books so far in September. So I decided that I'm going to do a mid-month wrap-up so that it's just a little bit more fresh in my mind, and so that this video doesn't turn into half an hour. So I read 4 novels and 4 graphic novels / manga. So I'm going to start with the novels. The first book I read was Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. This was my reread in preparation for reading the sequel, and I gave it 5 stars right away. It follows Amari. I think she's 12 or 13, and her brother has gone missing, and the police think that he got involved in gang activity, and they aren't really looking for him, and they don't really care. And so she's decided to make it her mission to find her older brother Quentin, and she gets a mysterious message from him that introduces her to a whole magical world. And once she gets into the magical world, there are competitions to try out for different training programs, and she wants to go straight to supernatural investigations because that's where her brother was, and she thinks that's where she's going to find information to get her brother. She has to deal with a lot of hardship, a lot of bullying from the other kids who are, legacies. They've been part of this magical world for much longer than her. And it's a great story. It's really fun. There's some great friendships in it, and I loved it. And so then I picked up the second Amari book, Amari and the Great Game, and this was great as well. We get a villain that I swear reminded me of Professor Umbridge from the 5th Harry Potter book. She's just so evil, and I love watching Amari and her friends kind of fight back. She's targeted unfairly because of her magical ability, and there was a lot of political connotations from this book that I think maybe kids wouldn't necessarily pick up on all of it, but it was just really great. It did end on kind of not exactly a cliffhanger, but it didn't feel like a great ending point, but it just makes me want the third book all the quicker. So I gave this book and the first book 5 stars and thought they were super enjoyable. I then picked up Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I don't really read much romance, but I've heard that this was a little bit more than romance, that there was some more character development and that it was a bit grittier. And I guess that's true. We follow a woman who works in publishing as an agent, and she kind of talks about book tropes as they happen in her life. Her boyfriend going on a trip to save a small farm and then falling in love with the rancher or something, and she's the evil, cold Manhattanite who just is obsessed with her job, and she's like, I'm the evil one in this romantic trope. But she goes on a trip with her sister to a location where a best-selling book was set, and just kind of humoring her sister. And they talk a lot about grief and just their relationship since their mom has died. And she meets a guy who was in publishing and who she didn't like the first time she met him, but then she does. And it was entertaining, and I gave it 3 stars, but I didn't actually find it to be great. It was entertaining, but I probably won't remember it come the end of the month. And the last novel that I finished so far is the book The Measure by Nikki Erlick. This had a really interesting premise. It's our world, but overnight, everybody who's 22 years old or older receives a box with a string in it, and talks about their measure of their life, and people find out that their strings correspond to how long their lives are going to be. And it really gets political about like short stringers versus long stringers, and it changes a lot of people's actions. If they know they have a really short life, they start doing more and more risky things, trying to really fit it in. And for the long stringers, they know that they can't die, and they also take lots of risks. But something that is just really glossed over is the fact that even if they don't die, they can be injured, and they can be, sick or chronically ill. And I really feel like this book was trying to do a lot of things, but I feel like it lacked a little bit in conveying that just because you have a long life doesn't mean that your quality of life is going to be great, especially if you make like unnecessary risks. I did feel like this book was really emotionally manipulative. They were banging you in the face about the message, live your best life, and having the knowledge of when you're going to die is not necessarily a good thing. But it worked. I really did actually like the story. It did give me a lot to think about. And I think this is a great book club book because there were a lot of different parts that you could talk about and debate, really. So I ended up giving that 4 stars and thought it was pretty enjoyable. So moving on to the graphic novels and manga, this was less successful for me, unfortunately. So the first manga I read was Goodnight, Punpun by, I don't know, but I will put the picture up here. And this had so many high ratings that I was like, all right, this is going to be great. And I thought it was, well, one, not great. It's about a boy. I think he's about 10, but the author draws him as this like bird. I will show pictures so you know what I'm talking about. But basically his parents are fighting a lot, and then his mom is in the hospital and his dad suddenly goes away. And as an adult, you're realizing that the mom was attacked by the abusive husband and he probably went to jail. And so his uncle comes to take care of him, and it's like a really slice of life type story, but it felt really all over the place. So this boy is 10, and one of the very first things he does with his friends at school is he like tries to watch porn, and like there are drawings of the porn he looks at. So this is definitely not a graphic novel or a manga for kids. But then they also get a VHS tape of a porn, and they decide to watch it. But then partway through, this man shows up recording himself and says that he's killed his whole family and that they're buried in this warehouse and that there's like money if they tip it off to the cops, which just felt really weird for these children. So of course they go investigate it, and it's just super strange. And I kept reading because it had such high ratings that I thought maybe it had a great ending. But no, it did not. There's also a random like Japanese man face that's like in the sky that he refers to as God, and God just like shuts him down sometimes. It was weird, and apparently there's a whole series, but I'm not continuing. I ended up giving it 2 stars. A graphic novel I did end up enjoying was called Lewis Undercover. This art was exquisite. I'm going to show you examples. It was just so beautiful. I gave the art a 5 and the story a 3, so overall I gave it a 4 star. And this is about a young boy and his younger brother, and their parents are getting divorced, likely because the father is an alcoholic. And yeah, this is the slice of life where he just goes back and forth between his mom's and his dad's, and he finds a baby raccoon and, takes care of it, and he likes this girl and he wants to buy her a present. And it was just really sweet and cute. And the art was just outstanding. So I really did enjoy that one. So another manga I read was I Hear the Sunspot. And I'd heard really great things about this. It's about a deaf guy that's in college, and he is trying to find somebody who will write down notes for him in his classes because he is missing a lot because he can't hear. And so this guy finds out that he needs help, and he's like really, really broke. And when the deaf guy offers him his lunch, he's like, all right, I'll do it for, food. And I mean, that in and of itself was fine. But then randomly they kiss, and like, I don't know, there was like no build up to this relationship developing. It was just like a very transactional relationship. And then, yeah. So one good thing I did like about it was there was a woman who found out about the deaf guy and was talking to the broke guy and was like, oh, it's going to be my dream. I'll marry him and I can do everything for him and all this nonsense. And he called out that ableism. He's like, this is a real guy with real feelings. Like, you can't just steamroll over him and treat him like he's this character from a book. And I did like that. That was, I thought, really important. But the rest of the novel was just, I don't know, boring? I don't know. So I'm not going to be continuing that one. I gave that 3 stars because it was at least enjoyable while I was reading it. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the graphic nonfiction Pyongyang by Delisle. I gave this 1 star, and I'll tell you why. So the art style is black and white, and it's not really particularly lovely or distinct. It's just fine, and I was going to give it 3 stars because this was his true account of going over to North Korea to work in an animation studio. And we got to see how North Korea tries to present its country to outsiders. We got to see that, they didn't use electricity except in like the foreign, in the places foreign people would stay, like the hotels. They didn't have very much food and, but they tried to present it to make it look like they weren't this super poor country. And I found all of that pretty interesting and was on track to give it 3 stars. And then towards the end, he goes to basically a museum of propaganda about why Americans are terrible. And he's French, not American. And she's talking about all of these things that Americans have done to harm North Korea, which most of them were not true. Not that we haven't done damage, but most of what he was seeing was propaganda. And they talked about torture and like it was not at all sexy or anything. And he's like, I'd like to torture her for a couple of ways. Like, I'm going to show you the exact quote because I don't remember it exactly. But it was so loathsome and like inappropriate, misogynistic, and downright disgusting. The fact that this woman is talking about torture and he's like horny. Like, gross. Why did he feel like that was necessary? And I looked when this book was published, and it was in the early 2000s. I was just like, how did this pass? Like, why did an editor not see this or flag it? It was just ruined the whole book for me. So I won't be picking up any more of his stuff. So that's fine by me, honestly. It was not that great in the beginning anyway. So those are the 8 books I have read so far in the month of September. I'm really hoping the second half is going to be a bit better. Let me know if you've read any great stuff lately. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining. Bye.